Now you may see some moisture on my forehead, and I assure you it is not the frosting of a glazed donut, but rather it is the sweat that happens to come out of my brow due to the heat outside that is unfortunately blazing upon us Californians. But the question here today, did the Baltimore Ravens do enough to make the rest of the AFC teams and the rest of the NFL teams wipe the sweat off of their brow with their offseason? Welcome to Out of the Pistol. It's Jose Verduzco, and today we're going to be doing part 2 of the Ravens draft grades, and we're also going to be reacting to the Alejandro Villanueva signing. Going into this offseason, I said that the Ravens have 3 major glaring holes on the roster. Number 1 for me was offensive line. Following that up, you had wide receiver. And then finally, I had edge rusher as their final need. I also had 3 other positions that I listed here just because I wanted depth at that position, or also looking towards the future with some expiring contracts approaching soon. So let's go ahead and go through the rounds 4 and 5 of the draft that the Ravens had, and also the signing that they just made on the offensive line. The Baltimore Ravens did sign offensive tackle Alejandro Villanueva to a 2-year deal worth $14 million. You see, the Baltimore Ravens had to trade away one of their big boys in Orlando Brown Jr. to their hated rivals, the Kansas City Chiefs, and instead they replaced him with another huge man. This man is 6'9", over 300 pounds. He's going to come right in, and the expectation is for him to take over that starting right tackle position. I've heard a lot of negatives. I actually want to address specifically one of the channels that I love to frequent, one of the ones that I love to watch, AFC North Talk. If you guys are not subscribed to AFC North Talk, huge shout out to them. One of the most entertaining YouTube channels that's out there right now. I love watching these guys bicker amongst each other. And if you're a fan of my channel, you're very familiar with Sonny from SCG Sports. He is one of the main hosts there. So basically there was this big stink made about Villanueva and his changing of positions from the left tackle to the right tackle. And I totally understand that Alejandro Villanueva has never played right tackle in his career, and that could be a little bit of a concern. But my question to you and my rebuttal to you is this. Don't you think that the Ravens had an at-length conversation with Villanueva before signing him to play right tackle? Don't you think they discussed this? Don't you think they went over tape? Remember, this is the Baltimore Ravens that we are discussing. This is not the Houston Texans, who draft a quarterback with their first pick of the draft that they didn't even have a meeting with. The fact of the matter is Villanueva knows what he's coming to Baltimore for. He knows that he is going to be slotted over to the right side, and he knows that he may get to play left tackle if Ronnie Stanley is not fully healthy by the time the season begins. So that's why I'm not too concerned about it. Like I said, I do tend to trust the Ravens on these types of moves, and if they feel like Villanueva is comfortable playing that right side, I am going to trust them, and we have to see how it goes. Now, on my last video, I was pretty critical of the Ravens from rounds 1 through 3 for not taking an offensive tackle early on. I really wanted them to draft Tevin Jenkins, but they passed on him quite a few times. So now I'm going to be a little bit more lenient on the grades, possibly, just due to the fact that the Ravens clearly had a plan, and they did address the right tackle position, so I'm not going to be as mad about it as I was. So a quick recap of last video. I gave the Rashod Bateman an A, which is worth 4 points. If you guys want to see how the grading system that I am working with works, go back to the last part 1, and I explain in detail, well, not in very good detail, but I do explain how my grading system is going to work for these grades. They follow that pick up with edge rusher Odafe Oweh, aka Double O. I gave that pick a B-. They followed that up with offensive guard Ben Cleveland in the 3rd round at pick 94. I gave that pick a B, a solid B. Followed that up 10 picks later in the 3rd round, they picked Brandon Stevens, defensive back, and I did give that pick a C-. I don't believe that I am going to retroactively change any of these grades. I'm going to stick with my gut. Now, a lot of my reasoning was stating the fact that the Ravens did not draft an offensive tackle, but I'm going to keep these grades the way they are, and we're going to move on. So the Ravens got phenomenal value in the 4th round. This is usually where the Ravens make their money, is in the 4th round. You always see them pick up some players that happen to fall, and that's exactly what happened in this year's draft. They drafted wide receiver Tylan Wallace. Absolutely phenomenal value. And I gotta say, I was surprised that the Ravens did draft another wide receiver. I did not expect them to do that, but they did. And it's funny because Eric DaCosta before the draft stated that I am insulted that you would even say that the wide receivers the Ravens have is not enough. And then he goes into the draft and drafts 2 receivers in the first 4 rounds. Regardless, what I've seen from Tylan Wallace, I absolutely love. I know a lot of people are comparing his play style to Steve Smith. I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but he definitely does have that physicality. He's kind of like a Deebo Samuel type, kind of like Devin Duvernay was coming out of Texas. Now, that does not to say that Tylan Wallace is going to take Devin Duvernay's spot, but I absolutely love what I've seen from Tylan Wallace. The guy goes up and fights for the ball whenever it's thrown to him. And this is exactly what I've been harping on all offseason. The wide receiver position needs to get guys that are going to go up and fight for the ball. You don't necessarily need to be 6'5", 6'6". You just need to go up and snatch the ball out of the air, have a big catch radius, and fight for the damn ball. And I believe that they got 2 guys, one Rashod Bateman in the first round, and now they followed it up with Tylan Wallace. I am going to give this pick a B+. I really like this pick. Not sure if he's going to get much playing time, especially in his rookie season, but I think that he can be a huge contributor moving forward for the Ravens here. Moving on to the 5th round, and this is where the Ravens draft ended here. Their first pick was at pick 160, and they drafted cornerback Shaun Wade. Let me tell you why I don't hate this pick. I understand that the Ravens have probably more needs. Like, you would have probably liked to see them address the tight end position a little bit earlier than they did. But let's not forget, Shaun Wade, before this past offseason, was graded as a first-round pick. You saw a lot of mock drafts having Shaun Wade coming out in the first. And for the Ravens to be able to get him in the 5th round, now there is a reasoning for that because they did move Shaun Wade to the outside, and he did not perform nearly as well as he did when he was on the inside playing the slot, playing the big nickel. And as I understand it, he was also dealing with some injuries this past year. So that's the reason for his falling all the way to the 5th round. But I do not at all hate this pick, taking a chance on a guy. Now, a lot of people had concerns the fact that you're taking another cornerback when cornerback is actually one of the positions that is probably the deepest on the Baltimore Ravens. But listen, man, I was one of the guys that said last offseason, maybe we should look at the cornerback position because while, yes, the starters are awesome and the short depth that we do have is pretty damn good, but you have guys that are injury prone. Jimmy Smith, Tavon Young. Can you trust them? The answer is no, right? If they stay healthy, you're solid. You're fine. You don't have to worry about it. Basically, what the Ravens did, they took their strength and they made it even stronger. So I don't hate this pick. And plus, you're taking a flyer on a guy that was technically a first-round talent. Let's not forget that the Ravens have done this in the past. Even going not so far back with Orlando Brown Jr., he was projected to be taken in the first round, but he fell to the 3rd round due to a horrible combine, probably the worst combine in NFL history. So taking Shaun Wade in the 5th, I don't hate that value whatsoever. I am going to give this pick a B. 11 picks later at pick 171 in the 5th round, the Ravens did draft edge rusher Daelin Hayes. Now, I do like the Daelin Hayes pick. For one, he was the team captain over there at Notre Dame. And let's not forget that he actually has more production, sack production that is, than the Ravens' first rounder in Odafe Oweh. So Oweh has 7 sacks in his college career, while Daelin Hayes actually has 9. So let's take that into consideration. From what I'm expecting from Hayes, I don't hate this. This is like a little bit of a flyer. The Ravens needed to address the edge rushing position. Everybody knew this, right? They got someone in the first round. Maybe they feel like Hayes could be more of a sure thing. Not sure if they're going to have him put weight on and maybe play on the interior defensive line, or if they're just going to stick him on the edge and call it a day there. Whatever they do, we'll have to see. You know, maybe he turns out to be something. Like I said, I trust the Ravens in developing especially the edge rushing position. So we are going to have to see what Daelin Hayes does there. But I do like the value. I'm going to give this one a B. And then finally, the Ravens' last pick of the draft was Ben Mason. And he is apparently listed as a tight end, but really he's more of a fullback from what we saw. Now, you know that Jim Harbaugh was in John Harbaugh's ear talking about Ben Mason like, hey, man, check this kid out, bro. You know, maybe you should draft him. And that's exactly what they did. So to me, Ben Mason is a Nick Boyle / Pat Ricard insurance policy. You guys saw the Spider-Man meme that Pat Ricard actually tweeted out, and that's exactly my thought process when I saw him get drafted. He even wore the same number that Pat Ricard is currently wearing in the NFL. To be quite honest, I am not expecting much from Ben Mason aside from maybe backing up either Ricard or Nick Boyle type as a blocker. And, you know, the Ravens love their blockers, especially considering how much we run the damn ball. So maybe he does make the transition to tight end. If he does, let's not forget the Ravens did trade this offseason for Josh Oliver, and I understand the man has been injured his entire career and he only has like 15 receiving yards or something minuscule like that. So, but they still have Mark Andrews at the top, you know, obviously a top 10 tight end, arguably top 5. Then you have Nick Boyle, if he can stay healthy, because he did have some injury last year. And if not, maybe Ben Mason takes that third tight end spot. Maybe Josh Oliver ends up being healthy and taking that spot. Regardless, you're throwing bodies there, and I don't hate it. I would have liked to see the Ravens maybe address the tight end position a little bit earlier and maybe actually draft a real tight end rather than putting a fullback over there at tight end. But overall, this is like a wait-and-see type pick. Maybe the Ravens could have done a little bit better with their last pick of the draft, but maybe they just didn't feel comfortable on taking some flyers that on the other players that were available. So this to me is an average pick. I'm going to go ahead and give it a C. So we take all of the grades and we add them all together with the point system that I'm using, and we average them all out. And what do we get? We get 2.81, and that means that it's a B-/a C+. Now, that is my grades averaged together. You don't have to agree, but that is the system that I did use, my point system. That's what I got. Now, again, retroactively, like I said, I don't want to change any of the grades, but now that the Ravens did address the offensive tackle position, maybe we can grade them a little bit on a curve. We can give them some extra credit and give them a solid B. I think that I'm totally fine with that as a grade. I think a B is a pretty good grade for this year's Ravens draft class. Now let's take a quick look at the positions of needs that the Ravens did have this offseason and how we're looking right now. So like I said, offensive line was the number one need for me, and I did say that it still needed work because at the time, we didn't have an offensive tackle on the right side. We had Tyree Phillips. Now, the Ravens went out and signed Alejandro Villanueva. On paper, the offensive line looks pretty solid. So I'm going to say that it was addressed. I'm going to say the offensive line was addressed, so good job, Ravens. Following that up, wide receiver was my second biggest need for the Ravens, and I did say that it's addressed. I think that I really like the Rashod Bateman pick. I believe that he will become the number one receiver that Baltimore has been needing and wanting desperately since, 1996 pretty much. So I love the way that they address the wide receiver position, so good job, Ravens. Then finally, the edge rushing position. I did say that it still needs work, and I think I'm going to stick to that. I like the potential ceiling of 0099, as I do call him right now, Odafe Oweh. But we have to see, man, because we have to see if Pressure Daddy, a.k.a. Jalen Ferguson, can actually take that next step that we're expecting. Who knows if that's going to happen? Tyus Bowser, we know what to expect from him. He's going to be a solid player there. And we also have Pernell McPhee. I would like to add at least one more veteran to the edge rushing room there. I think that would really complete not only the edge rushing spot, but also the Ravens team in general. So if the Ravens go out and sign Justin Houston or like a Ryan Kerrigan, for example, I think that that's an A+ offseason for the Ravens. I think that they did phenomenally, at least to what they could have done. So if they make that move, then I will be extremely happy. But as of right now, let's maybe take a look at some veteran edge rushers there. Following that up, the tight end position, I did say that it's addressed because they did trade for Josh Oliver and they drafted Ben Mason, who I guess is going to play tight end. In theory, it's addressed, but they probably could have gone out and done a little bit more. But regardless, we'll say it's addressed. We'll just see how it is in the regular season. Safety, that was another need that I still think that the Ravens have, not because I don't like the Joker, Deshaun Elliott, or Chuck Clark, but look, Deshaun Elliott is coming up on a contract year. You got to start looking towards the future. Who is going to be playing free safety in the coming years? That's something you got to think about. So I'm definitely going to say that the safety position still needs work, but it's a good spot to have because it's not a desperate need right now. And then finally, the last position was defensive line. While the defensive line for the Ravens is deep right now, it may be looking a little bit thinner come next season. You don't know if Calais Campbell is going to be returning. Brandon Williams is going to be another year older. He's probably getting close to retirement, to be quite honest. Derek Wolfe, he is signed to a little bit of a deal here, but we got to start addressing that defensive line, try to get a little bit younger. That's what I would like to see. And you do have guys like Justin Madubuike coming in, so it's not too far off. It's not too bad, but it is time to start looking forward to the future on the defensive line. So overall, not a bad job this offseason, Ravens. I actually do like the moves that they have made, and I'm pretty happy with it, I gotta say. So I am ready for the season to begin. And like I said, the last move that I personally would make here would be signing a veteran edge rusher, a Justin Houston or a Ryan Kerrigan. And to me, that would make the roster complete. Thank you guys so much for watching. I absolutely appreciate that. Don't forget to smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, all that good stuff. Follow me on social media. All the links are going to be down in the description box below. And I will be seeing you in the next video. Later.